Okay, we are live. Are you ready to get nuts, Jeff?
I sure am.
Okay. On today's episode of Playing Small is Cancelled, we have a very handsome treat. He's a mega successful entrepreneur and CEO, worldwide motivational and transformational speaker, best-selling author, Hollywood film producer, Grammy-winning jazz album producer, and Emmy award-winning TV show executive producer, just to name a few. Throughout his multifaceted career, he has been a part of multiple major startups, and he is the chairman of the Global Entrepreneurship Network, which works with entrepreneurs in 200 countries. No big deal. Or it's the White House, the State Department, the United Nations, and similar organizations internationally on economic growth initiatives and entrepreneurship programs. And he was also honored with the Champion of Entrepreneurship Award from JP Morgan Chase and Citibank. Big facts. He's just a juggernaut in all parts of life and a terrific human being. Please welcome the multifaceted, inspiring, and trailblazing, the handsome and game-changing, abundant Jeff Hoffman. How you doing, Jeff?
Greg, you realize it can only go downhill from here. We should just end it right now.
I don't think that's true. I think we're just getting warmed up. It sounds like I did good by you. I take great pride in those. So I'm so pumped for you to be here today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. And for our listeners, and we repurpose this on a lot of our platforms, in case you're not familiar, my best suggestion is do a deep dive, play catch up, read his book, check out all the stuff he's got going on. What I think is most valuable is we just dive right in and have an unbelievable conversation. But before we do, I have a little icebreaker for you. You ready?
All right.
Jeff, for you personally, what does it mean to live an authentic life?
A lot of people are trying to talk themselves into believing they're happy with things they're not. The biggest one, Craig, is their job, right? A lot of people are like, no, this is exactly what I wanted to do. And it's not. They had different dreams when they were younger. There's things they look out the window and wish they were doing. And then they just talk themselves into saying, no, I'm good. And you just know they're not. So I think the most important part when people think of being authentic, the first thing they think of is when you're talking to someone else. Are you being authentic? What I'm saying is the most important part is be authentic to yourself first. Live the life you want to live, do the things you want to do, and look in the mirror and be honest with yourself. Are you doing those things? Are you living your life? And if you're not, be bold enough to make changes. So for me, authenticity comes first with being authentic with yourself.
As if I couldn't love you enough. I mean, the best answer ever. And, my story is I reinvented myself in the pandemic at 35. I was on Wall Street for 13 years and I was having physical success, but I realized that this is not why I'm here. This is not what I feel connected to and so forth.
Exactly.
And that's when I finally had the courage to lean into what I love, which is personal development, transformation, help people and mindset and all that. And what I've noticed is that you nailed it. I think I saw an alarming stat. We talked about this in my TED talk. Only 20% of people are finding meaning and purpose in the work that they're doing. And there's a book that you're probably familiar with. I think it's called The Five Regrets of the Dying. And I believe the number one is that people didn't have the courage to live life on their terms.
You absolutely nailed that. And I'm glad you used the word courage because that's what it is. They know in their heart, I'm not really living the life I want to be and I could be, but they just don't have the guts to try. And so what happens is a week turns into a month, which turns into a year and then more years, and you don't get those back. And so that's what I see a lot of times what you just said. People know in their heart there's something different and they're not fulfilled and they're not connected to what they're doing. But you and I both know it is hard to make that jump.
Very
But
hard.
you did it. And by leaving Wall Street, I did it. Well, I just quit my job and walked out. I was broke and at an engineering job in a big engineering company. The next day, I had no savings, no job, no income, no health care, no food. But, you know, here was the thing. I had a good job at a good company and a good salary, and everyone pats you on the back. Well, you have a good job at a good company and a good salary. But nobody says, are you having a good life? Because I wasn't. I
Ooh.
actually did not like going to work every day. I got nothing out of my job except a paycheck. But no one was asking me my definition of a good life, only my definition of a good job.
Yeah. This is why I love to have conversations like this because I think there are people that don't even realize that they have a choice and that they should unapologetically yearn and desire to have it all. The relationships that you love, the career to die for, the fulfillment, the happiness, the connection, and the money. And I think there's a misconception that people think that a job has to be something that you don't necessarily like.
In fact, Craig, I gave a talk yesterday at an event, and probably the most important thing that I said, which you and I totally agree on, is that your career, your job, your business should be the vehicle that is taking you to the life you want to live, not the obstacle that's preventing you from living it.
Ooh.
And I said that one day because the number of people, when I ask them, what life do you want to live? And then I said, then why aren't you doing that? And like, well, I got this job, I got this mortgage, I got this company. So the job is the obstacle, the career is the obstacle, and it should be the vehicle. And I'll just, instead of practicing, I mean, not practicing what I preach, I quit my engineering job and started travel companies because my definition for me of an epic life was traveling, not sitting in that cubicle writing code. So I just quit and said, I'm going to find a way to turn the life I want to live, which is travel, into a business so that my job is actually the thing that's enabling the life that I want, not the one preventing it.
This could be the most important conversation in the world right now because you didn't have it all mapped out. You just,
Nope.
It sounds like you considered the alternative. And
Absolutely.
continuing down the path that you were going was that was probably the biggest cost, right? Of just being miserable and accepting.
I have to tell you a funny thing. My boss had been 26 years at this big engineering company. And he buzzed me while I was in the middle of this life dilemma, thinking, I'm just going to walk out. I have no backup, no plan, as you said, no money in the bank. But I can't live this life. I want to design the life that I want. But my boss called me because he heard I was leaving. And he'd been there 26 years. And I don't know how this got in my head, but when I walked from my cubicle to his office, it was about 26 steps. For some reason, I counted them. And all I could think when I walked into his office is 26 years later, you're just 26 feet to the right. And I was like, I cannot do this. I'm looking out the window. My personal passion is travel. And I was like, I will find a way to create a company where my job enables me to travel. But I had no plan when I walked out that door. I just knew I didn't want the alternative, to your point.
So first of all, I didn't even think that we'd spend this much time talking about this, but this is the juicy stuff. I love it so much. So you took the leap, you had the courage, you didn't have it all figured out, but what was your next move? How did you start to get momentum?
Right. So one of the things that's really important that I tell people all the time is you have to have intent, right? When intent is in your mind, then you see opportunities. If intent's not there, if you're not serious about changing your life, if you don't have intent, you miss the opportunity. So that's an important note because for me, I had that intent. I'm thinking I want to travel. My job, I never even leave my cubicle. So maybe there's an opportunity because I'm always thinking about it. Is there a way I could create? This is the entrepreneurial part. I can't find, my friends used to make fun of me. Dude, there's no job where they're going to hire you and then pay you to fly around the world, right? Because I wanted to travel. And I kept thinking, that's fine, but I'm not going to give up. I'm going to try to make that job, right? Can I create that? So because that was my intent and I thought about it all the time, the enabling point, and by the way, excuse me, the real answer to your question is go solve a problem in the industry, the space you want to be in. You have to become important to the people that you wish needed you. So I want to travel. So what do I need to do? I need to become important to the people, airlines in my case at the beginning, around the world that I wish would call me because they can let me fly around the world. How do you become important to people? Go solve a problem they haven't solved. So for me, that moment came when I was broke and unemployed, standing in line at an airport. Back then, you had to check in with a human being to get your boarding pass. Yeah, and I missed the flight because the line was an hour and a half long. Everybody was upset. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. I'm standing in my moment because my intent is to find a way to create a job or a company where it's actually my job to travel. I saw that moment. So actually went home on that Friday, really started my first startup, which is the When you go to the airport now and you check yourself in at a kiosk, oh, that was my first invention. And so that was a combination of opportunity, intent, and solving an actual problem. So airlines started calling me from all over the world. Can you come to our country next because we'd like to put your kiosks in our airport? And now they're in airports all over the world.
They're their new norm.
Pardon?
They're their new norm.
Yeah. Well, event now we're all going to our mobile phone,
That's
but
true.
this was 25 years ago. So my product had a pretty good run.
Unbelievable. Yeah, that's crazy. I love it. So it wasn't that it was unintentional, but you were paying attention, right? And you saw that there was a gap here. There was a void that needed to be filled. So how
Right.
can you creatively create something to solve this problem? And then just like that, now that there's intentionality, now the ideas begin to flow.
Right. So what I'm telling your audience is think about who you want to be important to. If you want to be in the fashion industry, then you need the head people in the fashion industry to need you. And they'll need you if you have a solution to their problem. And you figure that out by getting immersed in that business and looking for the problems. I'm standing there, I was like, whoa, wait, I'm trying to find a problem to solve. It's right in front of me. People can't check themselves in. What if I fix that? Then I'll bet everyone in the travel industry would want to talk to me. So that's how it started. Find a problem by getting deep into that industry and seeing what their problems are.
Yeah.
Then, of course, figuring out how to fix it. I had no idea what I was doing, but we got there.
Of course, yeah. And I love that someone, maybe like a friend told you, well, that job doesn't exist. You can't do that. And then
everybody,
you immediately thought like, okay, so how can I create it?
Exactly. Everybody says, right? They kept saying there's no job like that. And that's what everyone else said. And all I heard was all I could think was, fine, I'll go create it. Just because that job doesn't exist doesn't mean it can't exist. You guys are accepting that job's not there. But entrepreneurs just create the job they wish they had.
Yeah. So there's something, when I started studying NLP a lot, which is how to reprogram your mind, there was something called reality distortion field.
Awesome. Go on.
People like Walt Disney, Steve Jobs, Jeff Hoffman have it. And I'm just curious, do you think that this is something that you can teach to someone, or do you have to be born to start thinking about opportunities where most people see limitations?
Okay. I think it's both. I think that the more time that you spend listening to people like you, right, to you, the points you make, the shows you have, the guests you have, so you can learn a lot from people that have been there before you. Because sometimes you just like, whoa, I never thought of it that way. And someone changes your thinking by suggesting something. By the way, I always do that. When I have a business hero, or, my definition of a hero or picking a mentor is not, it's 360. It's not just because they were successful in business or made money. It's to pick a mentor or a role model, pick someone you want to be like when you grow up, no matter how old you are. So it's more holistic. So when I would find people that I look at and say, man, I wish I was like him or her someday, then I would really dig in to try to figure out what is their thought process, what is their mindset, what are their habits. But it's a lot about what you talk about. What frequencies do they vibrate in? How does their brain work? And if I can figure that out, it might trigger something that I'm not doing that I should be. So you can learn from it, but I do think a part of it is born, because some people are just afraid of risk, and you shouldn't be an entrepreneur then. And that's fine. We're not judging anybody, but that's an example. That saying, being an entrepreneur is like jumping off a cliff and trying to build an airplane on the way down.
Yep.
If that scares the hell out of you, don't do it.
Yep.
But I spent my life jumping off the cliffs, and I'm thrilled when I don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. So that's just a DNA thing. There's no right or wrong, but part of it is born.
Absolutely love it. And it's true. It's not for everybody. And I've seen that. You have to be able to embrace the calculated risk.
Yep.
And so forth. And a technique that you just described there is like modeling. So find people that are doing what you'd like to be doing, or the type of human that you'd like to be, and then model their frequency. Like, what are their thought patterns? What is their behaviors? And then at the very minimal, you'll elevate what you're capable of, just like that.
Exactly. And that's what I've tried to do my whole life, because no matter who we are, there's always someone that has gotten to somewhere that we want to go, has done something that we want to do, and we can learn from them.
That's it. Yeah. This is unbelievable. So many places we can take this. I wanted to ask you selfishly, you wrote an instant classic book called Scale. And one of the big concepts is that the only way to truly grow your company is to reduce its reliance on you to scale. What about for someone that might be building a personal brand and they happen to be a big portion of the brand? What can they do in a specific instance where they can scale and maybe not make the brand so reliant on them?
Yeah. So part of that, it's definitely harder when the brand is you, but it's super hard to scale still if you're the only person. And my favorite example is the easy one, Tony Robbins, right? At the beginning, no one wanted to go to any event that it wasn't Tony himself. How do you scale that? You can't. There's only so many days in a year. But he did. What he did was he packaged his techniques and his concepts. He trained people, and then he promoted these people. He promoted the people in his organization to say, they know everything that I know. And yes, you'd still rather pay a little more for Tony, but he has tons of people that are Tony Robbins trainers that people pay to go see. He does not do but a very small percent of the Tony Robbins trainings now, just using him as one random example. And yet he was able to scale that. So it's packaging as much. You cannot duplicate yourself. But, well, not yet. Pretty soon AI will do that. Excuse me, allergy day.
Well, good.
Package as much of yourself as you can and train as many people and then promote them so that people say, well, I wish it was Craig, but if it's not Craig, I'm pretty impressed by the people around him and I'm happy to talk to them.
You know what? That was the perfect analogy. Tony Robbins, everyone knows him. And
right.
I could totally see, like, in the beginning, there's only one of him to go around.
Yep.
But now there's extensions of him. It almost reminds me, like, in football, if you're a sports fan, but like
big time,
anyone that was on Belichick's staff would leave and then get a big job because they were an extension of Belichick.
I completely agree. I always tell people that team was a winning team because of the system that included everybody.
Yeah.
Big fan of that. Football is my number one sport, and I mentor a lot of former NFL players and some current ones. So
yeah, we're getting pretty close.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah,
football season's coming. A number of my friends that, again, people that I work with and mentor are all in training camp.
I love it. I know, same. With all the hats that you wear these days, and you do a lot, what are you personally most excited about right now?
So, our nonprofit that you mentioned, our big one, the Global Entrepreneurship Network, by just literally virtue of everything you and I just talked about, one of my personal commitments was, let's show as many people as we can how they can just design their own future, create their own job, turn their idea into a way of living, right? A profitable venture, et cetera. So that's what Global Entrepreneurship Network does, that I'm the chairman of. That's the organization that's on the ground in 200 countries. And it's exciting to me because entrepreneurship is not a job per se, right? It's a mindset and a skill set. But traveling around the world, for example, I just came back from Kazakhstan in Siberia, teaching people how to help themselves by teaching them the fundamental skills of entrepreneurship is really exciting to me because, we've done it in villages in Africa. And then I come back later, and what was a village of dirt huts is houses and offices, and they've created something because they've developed the mindset and the skill set to turn their ideas into businesses. I love seeing that.
Yeah, you're such a beautiful soul, and it's so obvious to me, the consciousness, like at your core, you want to help people. You want to facilitate those transformations. You want to help other people reveal their light. It's beautiful to see.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. That is what it's important to me. And when I'm blessed enough to get to go out and do that and see people grow, it's very fulfilling.
Yeah, I love that. I was looking at your content, which I highly suggest everybody do after this conversation. One of the things that you said was that most startups fail. Well, let's be honest, most startups fail in general. But one of the big reasons why they do is they typically say they ran out of money. But you disagree. You think they ran out of ideas. Is that right?
Yeah, they ran out of talent. Well, here's the reason I posted that. Because that's what they always tell me. I said, what happened? We failed. Why? We ran out of money. And I'm like, you really didn't run out of money. You ran out of talent. Because if you had the right people, you ran out of innovation, you ran out of ideas, you ran out of creative ways to fix the problem. And so people use money as a crutch, right? I would succeed if only I had more funding. Actually, you'd succeed if only you had more really innovative rock star people around you who could figure stuff out. And so that's why I posted that, because the key to success is not, of course, funding matters. It's not getting more money, it's surrounding yourself with absolute rock stars. When you find creative, innovative rock star people, they find ways to get stuff done without money. When you bring average people around you, they just sit there and say, well, we need more money to do this. And my challenge is there any way you guys can figure this out without money? Rock stars say yes. Average people say no.
So good. It's like, I get approached a lot these days to invest in companies and be advisors, probably not nearly as good as you do. But I imagine one of the things that you look for in a company is the jockey, not just the horse.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We invest way more in people than we do in ideas. And the big reason, Craig, you and I can help someone rewrite a business plan, a marketing plan, change the product, but we can't rewrite their DNA. So a really good idea presented to you by some average people is never going to get done. Even an imperfect idea presented to you by these smart, passionate, right, creative people, they'll probably find a way to be successful.
Absolutely great. And at the end of the day, the most valuable capital is not financial, it's human, right?
Absolutely. That's when people ask us, because I was part of companies like Priceline, et cetera, they were successful. And they say, why were you guys successful? It's easy. I would walk down the halls in the early days of Priceline, look around and think to myself, if we changed industries, we probably still win because these are amazing people in this building. We recruited an incredibly talented team that I knew was just going to make things work.
I love it. So good. One of the other topics that you love to talk about on stages and really help you with is effective team building. I know that's big for you, like in culture and so forth. For the audience listening now and that will catch replay, what's something tangible that maybe someone could implement immediately that would help them create more effective team building within the organization?
Sure. So one of the things is everybody, talks about cash, right, in terms of compensation, but recognition is important, and recognizing non-work things, not just that I finished this product on time or I sold 10 units, but recognize behavior, right? And so what that means is companies need a culture. And I will tell you, Craig, how to know if you have a culture. My employees, I'd bring someone new in to interview, and I'd send them down to get coffee and something to eat before we started interviewing them. My employees would go down there, grab a cup of coffee, and just sit, have coffee, and hang out with the people. And one morning, they came out of the room and they whispered, cancel all the interviews. I said, why? They said, he's just not one of us. The next day, there was this woman who was funny because she was Hispanic and her English wasn't even good. And she came into the office. I just walked past her. She didn't know I was the CEO. She was headed down to the coffee break where I send some employees. And I was wondering how this will go. They came out a few minutes later. They said, we still want to interview her, but we're already hiring her. I said, why? They said, she's just totally one of us. So here's my question, anyone listening that has a company. If you and your team can't immediately talk to someone and say, he's one of us, she's one of us, then you don't have a culture. The reason my employees could say that is because they know what we value. They know what we believe in. They know how we behave. And so we have a defined culture of our values and our behaviors. And that is one of the things that really attracts people. It's a law of attraction. It'll attract the kind of people you want to be around. And it's glue. People can get the same paycheck somewhere else, but they can't get the same environment where they feel valued and appreciated and the company actually stands for something. Create a culture and figure out what it means to be, quote, one of us at your company.
So good. And I know exactly what you mean. One of us. It's an aura, it's an energy, it's a vibration. You can tell.
Yep.
You can tell pretty quickly, can't you?
You can, and if you can't, you need to work on that.
Yeah. As we get ready to land the plane, I wanted to ask you, Why is laughter so important to you, Jeff?
I'm glad you asked that, because throughout my life, it's funny that I've been criticized before where people have said to me, "Aren't you ever serious?" Yeah, the answer is absolutely. At game time, I'm very serious. But when it's not game time, life is short. One, laughter eases tension, right? Laughter puts things in perspective. Humor unites people. What are the things that we most share on social media? Is it some super sad story? No, it's something funny as hell. That's what we route around. And so I just believe it's important to ease tension, to unite people, to let people realize that your work deadline is important, but somebody in your family, God forbid, but somebody in your family having cancer, that's an actual problem, right? This thing that everyone's way too upset and way overreacting. You see people road rage, right? Okay, you're irritated someone pulled in front of you, but really? You're going to react like that? Humor diffuses that. And that's what I use for a lot of things. And it doesn't mean you're not serious. Since you and I mentioned football, one of my close friends who used to play for Baltimore is Ray Lewis. On the field, when Ray and I are traveling around and I run into NFL players, they all say, "Oh my God, I was glad." Tom Brady said one day, "I was really happy the day Ray Lewis retired." On the field, he's this monster. And Peyton Manning told me the same thing. He said, "I'm glad you left the league, Ray, because I hate looking over my shoulder all the time." So on the field, Ray was this absolute animal. But one time, he and I got in trouble. We were doing a live press conference, and the two of us were laughing about something. We were giggling like 12-year-old boys with all the cameras rolling. And they were like, "Can you two please get it together?" And Ray and I were laughing about something, and they're looking at this physical beast of a man, and I know what they're thinking. He's like a 12-year-old boy. What's his deal? The reason why is it's a man that enjoys life. When it's game time, you better not stand in front of him. But when it's not, he enjoys life, right? He laughs, he plays, he has fun. That's how it should be. Work hard when you have to work hard, but never take yourself too seriously. Don't take the wrong things too seriously. Your health, that's serious. Your family, that's serious. Your job's important to do professionally, but it ain't the same as those things.
So beautiful.
So we laugh a lot.
Yeah, I love to laugh too. It's my favorite. Belly laughs with my brother. Forget about it. Best.
Yeah, that's the things you remember. Correct. In your life, right? Those are the moments you don't remember. Hey, remember that one meeting? No.
Right.
You remember that time? What I just told you. I remember that time with all the cameras rolling that I couldn't stop laughing and Ray couldn't stop laughing and everyone was mad at us. I remember that moment, right? Because that was a life moment.
I love it. This is so good. One more, if you
bet.
I'm very curious. For a budding entrepreneur right now in 2024, what advice would you give them on how best to begin to build their brand?
Okay. So the first thing for the brand. Okay. I was going to say, to build your company and your product, the piece of advice I'd give you is get out of your office, right? Because what matters most is product market fit. And you guessing at what your customer wants is not the way to get there. So many companies say, we're building a prototype, then we'll push it out in the world and see what people think. And I always say, why don't you just go out now and ask them what they want you to build? What would they pay for? What do they need? Excuse me. Even in the Priceline days, I used to go to grocery stores in jeans, not tell anybody that I worked at a company, and just chat with people about travel. How do you travel? How do you like? How much do you spend? They didn't know I was building a company. I was just out in the market making sure I was building something they want. So for a company, spend time wherever your customer is, outside of your office, understanding that. For a brand, the answer to that, to me, is laser focus on one thing. And I call that thing your brand asset. What is the one, not 15 reasons I should buy your product or your service? Or, Craig, even if you're a personal brand, right? Because I have a lot of friends who are singers. Pitbull's a good friend of mine. And we constantly work on Pitbull's brand. And we constantly ask, is this brand consistent with who and what we want Pitbull to be before he does something? So the answer to that is to find your brand asset. And your brand asset is the one most distinguishing and differentiating and important thing about you compared to everybody else. And I always tell people, if you can't find that, maybe you should find another business idea. So what was it at the beginning of Priceline? It was name your own price. We had the only make a bid. And so that's all the commercials were, name your own price, name your own price, because we had the one thing that really defined our brand. So you need to find yours. What makes you as a person, a personal brand, or what makes you as a company most distinguished amongst your competitors? And that's the thing you need to build your brand around. Walmart, by the way, I've been learning this from people like Sam Walton. Sam said to me one day, he said, have you ever seen a Walmart commercial that talks about our high quality products? I said, no. He said, how about a Walmart commercial bragging about our customer service? I said, no. He said, right, because I built this company around one thing, low prices. You only come here because it's cheap, no other reason. So pick a horse and ride it that distinguishes you or your company from those around you. That's how you build a brand.
That's unbelievable. Thank you for that nugget.
You bet, man.
This was amazing. Let's land the plane with a little rapid fire, maybe 1 to 2 or
All right.
Are you ready for me?
Yeah.
Favorite movie?
Whoa. I was afraid you're going to ask that because I have a bunch of them.
I didn't say this was going to be easy.
Crap. And for different reasons. Dang it. All right. No, you're going to just laugh at me, but I'll tell you what popped in my mind.
Okay.
There's a movie I watch multiple times, and I rarely do that. And believe it or not, it's Hugh Jackman in The Greatest Showman.
One of my favorite movies of all time.
Because it's a movie about believing in your dreams and keeping your priorities. That's one of my favorite movies.
There's a whole chapter in my book called The Greatest Showman.
Really?
100%.
Okay.
I love that movie. I love the P.T. Barnum story. It's so inspiring.
I do too. The whole thing.
Could not agree more. Unbelievable answer. Okay. Your last meal on earth would be?
Oh, I would probably have to go with my comfort food, which is a good pizza. Not a fancy meal for me. My comfort food has always been pizza, and I have so many good memories around family and friends and pizza. I would pick that.
Okay. Love it. Okay. Favorite guilty pleasure?
Mine is ice cream. It's not even a habit. It's sitting down and eating way too much ice cream when I shouldn't eat it, and I know it's not good for me.
Yeah, very
but that's a guilty pleasure.
Very relatable. Favorite workout?
Not running. That's on the absolute opposite end because I do not have the mental discipline to run. So it would actually, you know what it is? I have a rowing machine. I love rowing because it works my whole body. And so that's probably one of my favorite things when I sit down on the rower.
Sounds beautiful. 2 more. Favorite book?
Favorite book is probably still The Alchemist. It just made me think long and deep about my life in a way I never had until I read that book the first time.
Okay. And last but not least, very deep stuff. Your favorite musician?
Well, Pitbull's going to kill me if I don't say him. But that's probably not. My favorite musician of all time is a band. And it's because I'm a classic rock guy. And during the tough part, it's Chicago, by the way. But during the tough parts of my childhood, what I would get away from everyone is I'd put on the headset. I had a drum set. I'd put on the headset. I'd crank up an entire Chicago album and just forget the rest of the world and play rock and roll. So Chicago got me through a lot of things when I needed it to. They're still probably one of my all-time favorite bands.
I love it, and I love the reason why. Jeff, this was unbelievable. For our audience and our community, what's the best way for them to support you, to get involved, and to keep up with you?
So my Instagram is Speaker Jeff Hoffman. I actually have a website, jeffhoffman.com. I'm probably most active on LinkedIn, but there's a lot of Jeff Hoffman. So put in Jeff Hoffman Priceline, and that one goes right to me. And, you know, we have a website for our philanthropic work called World Youth Horizons. It's worldyouthhorizons.com. So if people wanted to get involved and help volunteer on some of the work we do with children around the world, you can also find out more there. Thank you so much for having me today.
My pleasure. Hang up for 1 sec. Jeff, thank you so much for stopping by today and dropping these priceless, juicy nuggets.